This is All About Kids. I'm Toni Carter, and I'm here today with Davida Adedjouma and a wonderful new children's book, The Palm of My Heart, which Davida is editor of. Thank you for being here with us today, Davida.
Thanks for having me, Toni.
You know, I have looked through The Palm of My Heart, and it is not only beautiful in words, it's beautiful also in images. The illustrations are lovely, the thoughts are lovely. And I understand that this is the work of, what, about 20 young
people from St. Paul and Minneapolis.
Young African-American students that you've worked with.
Yes, right, in two different groups, and some children I've met along the way, too. So the Inner City Youth League in St. Paul and the African-American Academy for Accelerated Learning in Minneapolis.
Okay, I was going to ask you, where do you find talented young writers like this in the community?
Well, they are in community centers, and then there's some that you just, I found three other people that you're going to talk to, one of them later on, at a Juneteenth celebration. So we've got talent all over. It's just a matter of asking, our kids, can you do it? And they just say yes.
Well, there are a lot of poetry books, and there are a lot of books about children. This book of poetry by children is something very different. How does a project like this get started? Or how did this project get started, Davida?
I was doing an arts program at Inner City Youth League in St. Paul. And we were doing crafts, and they were doing painting and drawing, and I had the writing segment too. And children just don't like to write. It's too much like schoolwork. And this was an after-school program, so the last thing you want to do is be in school all day and then think, okay, we have to write all night too. And so we played games with it. We played musical games with the writing. It had to be real interdisciplinary to keep them going. But because writing is not like drawing, there's no big product that everybody can see at the end. What I did was put together a booklet of their work. So we started a publishing company. I had an art director, and the senior editor gave them little roles to play because I wanted them to learn how a book was put together. And so that's how that project came about. I wanted them to have something in their hands that showed, yes, this is what we wrote, this is what we've been doing for months.
So you were not commissioned to put this book together?
No.
The publishing company didn't call you up and say, Ms. Adedjouma, would you?
It was a fluke. Lee and Lowe had advertised in the Loft maybe 3 years ago for new writers, and I sent them some work of mine, and we've been writing back and forth for a couple of years, but I'm not a children's writer, so I never sent them anything. And I was on a grant from the Loft, the Minnesota Writers Career Initiative grant, and so when I was in New York, I took the chapbook with me and showed it to Lee and Lowe, just to kind of show them the kind of things I was doing. And they asked if they could keep it, and called me a month later and said, we're publishing the Black Is section. So there were like 6 sections to this book. There were stories, there were nonfiction, essays, poetry, and artwork. And they called and said, well, we're going to do the Black Is section. I'm thinking, I didn't submit this book for publication. I was just showing Lee and Lowe, the kind of work I was doing with kids here. So that's how that book came up.
Now that is really interesting. You talked about they're doing the Black Is section.
Right.
Now as I look through this book, every poem starts
with black.
The word black.
Right. Either black is, or it has to start with black. It was a writing exercise.
Okay.
So it's kind of writing in the round. We were sitting at a big, long table, and we start black is. And then each child would add a word. And then, so if you said black is dark, then the next word you had to work with was dark. So what is dark? So dark with the title poem, we had talked about that. So black is dark. Dark is lovely. What's lovely? Lovely is the palm of my heart. And so what's my heart? My heartbeats are filled with joy. And so it's just kind of writing in the round.
Black is dark. Dark is lovely. Lovely is the palm of my heart. And
my heartbeats are filled with joy.
And my heartbeats are filled with joy.
Yeah.
And that is the title poem for the book.
I loved the expression, the palm of my heart. One, since it was a mistake,
Tell me
and
about
I love
that.
those writing mistakes. What Felicia meant to write was the palm of my hand. We'd been doing exercises, writing exercises with hands. We were doing a Langston Hughes poem, And the children had traced their hands and written poems around their fingers. They'd photocopied their hands, and they'd written poems in the palm of their hands.
Oh.
And so that's what she meant to write. You know, that's what she meant to say, the palm of my hand. And it came out the palm of my heart. And some mistakes I believe you need to go with.
Oh, that's a blessed
And it was just
mistake.
perfect. So I just left it that, and it just seemed like the perfect title for the book.
Why did you think that was a perfect title for the book?
It was just, it's saying this is coming from the inside of my heart. You know, when you think of palm, you think of the inside, right, the middle. And so the inside of my heart, and this is who I am inside my heart. And so that just seemed like the perfect title, and I left it that way.
Now, with that particular poem again, one of the 20 young people who
Right.
wrote this poem,
Felicia
her name
Brazil.
is Felicia Brazil.
Right,
You told me about the palm of my heart being an era.
right.
How did she come up with the progression for this poem? Black is dark. Dark is lovely. Lovely is the palm of my heart. I know that was an era.
Right.
But what about the progression? This was an exercise that they were doing?
Part of it is, and these were very early exercises.
Okay.
You know, so black is, well, we were all black, you know, and we kind of referred to ourselves as black. You know, there's always the toss up, are you African American, are you black? I always say I'm black. I'm just comfortable with that, so that's what I am. And for the kids, black is dark. You know, you think of the crayon, the color, it's just a dark color. But I was like, oh, but what is dark? What does dark mean to you? You know, and dark can be soothing, dark can be scary, dark can be lots of things. Felicia was stuck. She was just honestly stuck because, you know, you have a lot of kids doing this and everybody's throwing out something. What are you going to say next? And she really didn't know what to say, and the kids reminded her she had just had her hair done.
Just had a perm.
Uh-huh. There's a perm kit, you know, called Dark and Lovely. And the kids told her, well, you just got your hair done. You know, she go, okay, dark and lovely. And it's perfect because I always tell the kids, you don't have to look outside of yourself or your culture to say what it is you want to say. Use things that, you know, you're familiar with. Why make that big jump, you know, at least until you're older anyway. She knew what dark and lovely was. She knew what her hair was. She knew how she had gotten her hair straightened. That's the kit she used. That's where it came from. So instead of, you know, a lot of times children will get frustrated saying, I don't know what to write about or I don't know where to go because they're trying to go outside of what they know. And I'm just bring it home. You know, just keep it at home. And
Now,
so
you've
she
been
knew
working
that.
for a long time with children in workshops
Yes.
such as this sort. This book, rather a surprise,
Yeah.
came out of the type of chapbook that you've done for a very
Right.
long time with your
Yeah,
students.
I'd wanted to publish myself. You know, I've always wanted to start my own publishing company. And so part of that whole chapbook thing is, you know, it gives me that feel, okay, you're getting close to what it is you want to do. This one was just a blessing that Lee and Lo just said, we're going to do it.
But
And
you've
they-
always tried to do something in these types
Yeah.
of workshops with students.
Right.
You're giving them a message, as you said, that they have the toolkit.
Oh, they
for
know how
writing.
to do it.
So many
It's
of us,
there.
not just kids, but adults, stay away from writing because we don't think we're equipped.
Or I think you get hung up on with adults particularly, the bestseller kinds of list, or we can't all be Terry McMillan, we can't all be Toni Morrison, but that doesn't mean we don't all have something to say. With children, my big concern is I'm not from Minnesota. You know, I'm from Chicago. I grew up in an all-black community, went to an all-black school, did not really come into contact with white people until I was 14 years old. So I was so grounded in who I was. You know, I'd read black literature. Our teachers wrote, our teachers performed. So for me, it felt like this is what you give back. You know, so I went to this school where the arts were really stressed, and that's part of my giving back. I call it my talent tide. You know, this is my 10% of whatever talent it is I have. Give that back to kids so they can pass it on. And I've told the kids in this book, that's what I expect them to do too.
What do you
know.
think the children learn as a result of being a part of this project?
Discipline, for one thing. Because a lot of times you have to figure now this book was actually done 2 years ago. So the youngest child at that point was 5 years old. They couldn't write. They would sit there and dictate to the older students would write it down, show the student, you know, what they had written by what they said. So they were teaching them how to read, how to write at the same time. But I think it was discipline, the fact that they were creative, that what they had to say was important enough to be one in any kind of book, but especially to be in a book where they can now walk in a bookstore and go over and see this book and say, my work is in there. And no, that can't be taken away from them, no matter what else may ever happen in life. You can't take that away.
Do you think, Davida, these are aspiring writers? Are the 20 young African-American students in this book
there are
going
quite
to be
a
authors?
few. There are a couple who really want to be, mostly into film though. You know, these kids have grown up versus how we were, the whole media thing. But yeah, they want to do film and things like that. There are a few where I think if they can stay in programs or keep working with people where the arts are stressed. You know, because I wrote as a child and kind of continued doing that, but I had people reinforcing that every step of the way. There are kids in here who could do anything, just anything they want. They can teach, they can write, they can be doctors, they can be lawyers, they can be whatever. And what's nice for me is just they will always have something to look back on and say, even when I was a kid, I knew I was great. I wrote about me being great and my people being great, and there it is.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Davida, you're a writer. And of course, this is a product that's come from your inspiration, from your talent, from your energy, and from your work. I know that there are other products that have come out of you as well. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the other work you've done in the past?
Well, the interesting thing is I don't write for children. Now, I do a lot of writing in a childlike voice, but it's still written for adults. I had a collection of short stories out, and there are 3 stories in there written from a child's point of view, but written for adults. And I seem to have a real strong child voice for adult fiction. I've written erotica, and that's my primary interest. So
that is funny.
When I came out with children's work, all of a sudden people were kind of, what's going on? And it's like, well, this is not my writing. I edited this. However, I do have a play coming out. And again, you know, my first play as an adult, it's a children's play. But again, it's still a little bit too old for children.
It's written in a child's voice, is that what you're saying?
Well, Stepping Stone Theater, and that's where it's going to be. It's a teaching theater, and it's mostly children who come. My first draft was entirely too old. And the second draft, which is the one they're kind of working from, when I go back and read it, I realize this is still a little bit too old. But because there's dancing and singing, it should help that along, right?
Now tell me about some of your other work. If someone wanted to look for your work, Davida, where would they go?
Well, with my first book last summer, you'd have to go get it out the library. It's out of print.
And the title?
Last Summer.
Last Summer.
And it was one of the winners of the 1987 Minnesota Voices Project competition by New Rivers Press. But one of the stories in there, Bingo, is done on National Public Radio once a year, so it's on cassette. But you'd have to order it from Selected Shorts in New York.
And it's in our libraries here in
the cassette isn't, but Last Summer is in the libraries here. There's a novel excerpt of mine. It's the erotic novel in an anthology called I Know What the Red Clay Looks Like, The Voice and Vision of Black Women Writers, and that's in all the bookstores, so you can get that.
All right.
Or just come to the play in February.
Great. Now about the play. Stepping Stone Theater.
Stepping Stone Theater.
Is producing this play.
Sweet Freedom, the story of Harriet Tubman.
Okay. Yeah. And it will be running at Landmark Center?
Landmark Center, Stepping Stone, February 4th through the 20th.
Okay. Yeah. Incidentally, are any of these children in the play?
2 of them auditioned, and they're not going to be in it. but they did get to audition for it. Yeah.
All right, that's wonderful. So we're continuing to call these students back.
Well,
and
we
inspire
go in doing interviews like the one we're doing with you. There are a couple of parents who have been very committed to having their kids come out with me, and the parents come, and
What is
so
really
I get to
wonderful, I
stay
think.
connected that way.
It is really, really wonderful to be able to bring young people
Yes.
to show a work like this.
And they
I'm-
are so polished
Yes, they
now.
are.
I keep telling them, why do I have to keep doing this? You all can do this by yourselves now. They are so sophisticated with it. They know how to go in a studio now and adjust their microphones, and they are just so articulate. It makes you just proud to see them.
we talk a lot about inspiring young people and we read a lot and we look for a lot to read
Right.
to young people. But I'm very excited about reading the work of young people. This poem, for example, is one of my favorite, and it's by a young man by the name of Brandon Johnson. Black ancestors died for my freedom. My great-uncle Jimmy risked his life to help black people vote. My great-great-grandmother voted for the first time when she was 80 years old. Black is boldness. What a wonderful
It's just a
storyteller Brandon
wonderful-
is.
It came that way. Well, people ask me, because these were children, how much editing I did. Very little. Most the students that I had worked with a lot, we had done so much with revision that everything was just really tight. But with Brandon's, that's just about the way it came out. And what's interesting, if you could show that poem one more time, because a lot of things, the one thing that some people have missed, some reviewers have caught it and some reviewers have missed it, these poems are doing double duty. Because if you notice, there's no table of contents. There doesn't have to be, because the title of each poem is embedded in the poem. So the title of this poem is Black Freedom is Boldness.
Ah, yes.
And so that it was set up that way. When I first did the chapbook, that's how I wanted it. And so that's exactly what's nice about Lee and Low, and why I have to keep giving them so much respect. The way the type is set in that book is the way I said it when I gave it to them. So their art director dealt with the book and the illustrations, and
Exactly
we
as you
discussed how,
wanted it.
but that's exactly the way I wanted it.
Now
So
that
the
is
titles were right there.
You know, I was real surprised to find in the December-January issue of Parenting Magazine a little picture from, guess what?
The palm of
The
my
palm of
heart.
my heart.
Right.
How did you feel about being recognized in this way?
Well, it was strange because I went home, played back my voicemail, and Liz, my editor, was yelling into the phone, "What? You know, you've gotten an award from Parenting Magazine, their Magic Rainbow Reading Award." And my first kind of thought was like, for what? I mean, it wasn't connecting with me that she was talking about the book and everything else, because they had just found out. So she's like, go get Parenting Magazine and turn to this page, and there it is. So, what, one of the top 50 books published this year?
This is wonderful.
Yeah.
The 1996
Right.
Reading Magic Awards. I think that's just wonderful.
Yeah, it is so great for these kids.
Now, you've been out and about with the kids over the past few months.
Right.
And I understand you've done a lot of different interviews.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They're getting used to.
Oh, they can do this without me. I've kind of told them I would do this one, and they have some more things coming up in February, you know, because it's Black History Month. So not only is it Black History Month, the play is coming out at the same time. So kind of the next flurry of, you know, activities will be happening then. I'm like, you all go do it.
Now, have they been at or will they be at the Hungry Mind, I understand?
They did Hungry Mind in September when the
have done
book
Hungry
first.
Mind.
So we've done Hungry Mind, Borders Uptown, Borders Minnetonka. I think we've got Red Balloon coming up in
Coming up,
February.
okay. So we should
This
look
show,
then for the
Minnesota
Red Balloon
Public
schedule.
Radio, right?
Minnesota Public Radio is
Yeah,
coming
we've
up
done
yet?
that already.
Oh, okay.
We've done that one, but Yeah, Red Balloon, I think it's going to be sometime in February. I'm also doing, for any parents who might want to bring their children, I just found out February 17th, I'm doing a children's writing workshop at the Minneapolis Public Library. So talking
on
about
the
how
17th
this
of February.
17th of February.
So we've got several
Yeah.
things to look for. We're going to be looking for
Right.
the play.
The play.
We're going to be looking for the children at Red Balloon
Right.
and other venues. We'll
Right.
be checking the papers. And then you're going to be doing the workshop at
the public library.
the public library in February as
Yeah.
well.
So we'll be talking about the book, and then I'll be writing with the kids. But I forgot, this Saturday I'm going to be at the Blaisdell Y.
Oh, okay.
So it's a writing workshop for parents and their children. We're going to write
right.
holiday stories.
Now, I'm also real excited that you've brought with you today a young lady by the name of Maisha Farmer.
Right.
And I'm going to be getting to talk with her and with her mother a little bit
Good.
about her work on the book.
Good.
Thank you again.
Because from now on, they're going to be doing their own interviews. They are great at it.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Well, thanks
and we'll be
thanks
talking
for having
with
me,
Maisha.
Toni.
Take care.
Okay. All right.
Black power is freedom, the strength to live life long. I'm here with Maisha Patrice Farmer and Gloria Little. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Maisha, you're one of the writers,
Yes,
and that was your poem that I just read, right?
yes.
How do you feel now about being a published author?
Good.
Was this one of your goals in life?
Yeah.
Now, I understand you've done a lot of writing before. Tell me about the writing that you've done in the past and how you came to be involved in this project.
Well, I usually write like Black history stuff and just write it and just keep it to myself. But when my mom came home one day and told us to write about black, what black means to us, so I wrote that, and me and my sister wrote that, and after a couple of years, I found out it got published.
Oh, was that a surprise to you?
Yes.
So now, are you pretty famous at school?
Yeah.
What do people say when they find out that you're a published writer?
Well, they say, can I have your autograph because you're so famous? And one time my friends was talking, and this girl's like, well, I got a friend and that does a real good poem, and my other friend said, well, I got a friend that's a famous writer.
This affects you in school. Everybody wants to be your writing partner now, I'm sure. Now, all this notoriety takes a lot of support, and I'm glad to have your mother here to tell us a little bit about how that's affected your family. I imagine you get to go out quite a bit to talk about the poem of my heart and to take Maisha to the different places where she's being interviewed.
Yes,
How does
Toni,
it
I
feel
do.
to be Maisha's mother?
Actually, I feel like I'm walking around with two wonderful stars, Maisha and her sister Tanisha, and I just love it that they come to the church and they had an African wedding type of thing for children. And at that time, they discussed the poem of my heart, and they introduced it to the church members, and I was so excited for her. And they just got through going through recognition at the church, and it's a lot of different places they go, and everywhere we go, it's like, are you one of the children in Poem of My Heart? And at Tanisha's school, and she goes to Webster, they put the book into their library.
Okay.
And every time they mention the book, it just makes me happy to know that my children was a part, and it felt real good to be able to meet Davida Adedjouma. And when I met her at the Juneteenth celebration, a couple of years ago, it was like, can my daughter do what? She said, can she write about what black is? And I said, I'm pretty sure she can. She does that quite often, is just sit back and just write. So I just felt good about it.
Oh, that is wonderful. Now, you have not just Maisha in this book, but another daughter as well.
Exactly.
So after meeting Davida at Juneteenth, you went home and you energized the whole family around this
Yes.
project.
Yes, I did. And Maisha and Tanisha Farmers, my other daughter, and they got together and they sit down and they said, well, I don't know, what are you going to write? And then they said, well, we're going to do it by ourselves. So they separated from each other, and just sit down and just wrote about what black meant to them, and they brought it out and shared it with me, and I was excited to see that they came up with 2 separate types of poems, and it turned out really good.
Now, Maisha, you're a student at Arlington High School, is that right?
Yes.
And you're in what grade?
9.
In the 9th grade. I know that some of the younger students, well, one of the younger students included your sister, Tanisha. And Tanisha's at Webster. What grade is she in now?
She's in the 6th grade.
So a couple of years ago, when she submitted a poem for this book, your sister was in 4th grade or so?
Yeah, 4th grade.
Did you help her with her poem?
No, she did it by herself.
She did it by herself. Black Imagination, letters printed in a book, waiting there. I'm sorry. Black Imagination, letters printed in a book, sitting there, waiting to be read.
Exactly.
Is she a reader, an avid reader?
Yes, she loves to read. Every time you look at her, she's got some type of book in her hand, and she loves to read. And she wanted to be here so bad, but she ended up getting sick on us.
Oh, no.
So it's the wonderful flu that's going around everyone's getting.
You're
so.
usually bringing Tanisha and Maisha.
And Maisha. So I'm very excited to have 2 children involved in the book.
How does Tanisha feel about the work of art that was created by the illustrator Gregory Christie to match her book?
Oh, she really liked it. She discussed it with us before, and we sit around and talked, and she said that the imagination is all in the picture illustration that's there. And she said they used their imagination to make them dance.
And how do you feel, Maisha, about the artwork that was created to match your and the other poem on the same page with yours?
Well, I like the pictures because it go with my poem too, because it's showing the mother or her grandma showing the child trying to teach her or him to stand up, and you can live your life the way you want to live your life.
Black power and the strength to live lifelong. Thank you so much for coming, both of you. Gloria, for being the supportive parent.
Well, thank you for inviting us. I really enjoy coming out and sharing with everyone, and I hope that people in the community really enjoy this book because it's something that a lot of our children can learn from.
I'm sure they do. And Maisha, thank you, and please thank your sister Tanisha for showing us some of the works from the palm of your heart.
Okay.
Check these out. Brown Angels, an album of pictures and verse by Walter Dean Myers, published in 1993 by HarperCollins Publishers. This book includes many old and beautiful photographs of African American children. The Block, a picture book published in 1995 by the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Viking. This book features a collage by Romer Bearden, poems by Langston Hughes, and an introduction by Bill Cosby. Brown Honey in Broom Wheat Tea, published in 1993 by HarperCollins Publishers. This book features poems by Joyce Carol Thomas and illustrations by Floyd Cooper. All About Kids urges you to check these and many other books out at your local library or bookstore.